it came to the point of like, okay, there's an opportunity for you to go to America, to leave everyone you've ever known, all the kids you've ever known, the family you've ever known, but this is going to give you an opportunity to create a new life.
You need to really find out what you enjoy doing.
Instead of the math skills, go get life skills.
This might be the biggest thing any of us have created.
You never failed. Have you really succeeded?
I think we're in.
We're in. This is where it officially begins. The first ever Find Your Grind podcast, hosted live here from Los Angeles in beautiful sunny LA. It is a gorgeous day today, and we're lucky enough to be able to do this in the Castbox studios. Thank you to these guys for helping put this together, and I'm excited to see where this thing develops. It's a beautiful day today, and we're about 20 stories up, looking at an awesome city.
18 to be exact. I hit 18 to get up here.
No, the security guards at the gate pushed the button for you. I learned that this morning.
Yeah.
That was new.
Yeah, we just walked right in. It was pressed. It was ready to go.
So I think for us, it's pretty exciting to even be here. Like I actually never thought I would do a podcast. You know, as like I worked in radio for a long time, and I like always was like, well, I'll never do a podcast. And I think I've only ever been on one podcast. I know you were on Drama's podcast. I'm sure you've been on a lot.
Yeah, I've been on a lot. It made radio accessible for everybody, and it's awesome to be able to be on. Like I've been on podcasts like in restaurants. I've been on really nice podcasts. Like it's cool to have a podcast. Yeah, and we got one.
Have you been on a podcast, Tosh?
I think everyone here could say with 100% certainty, no.
Right. Yeah. I mean,
it's all new thing.
It's a new thing.
She brought the dog.
Yeah. We did bring the dog. We have a puppy here.
I came prepared.
Yeah.
Nick, have you done many?
I haven't done many. No, I don't think I've ever done an official podcast. I've of course done interviews for, Half the Animal, the band that I play in. We do a lot of these type of situations, but not an official podcast, I don't think.
Right.
No. So I'm very excited to start this journey with everybody here. We have all of the founders here of Find Your Grind in the same room. We got Mike Smith, who's an amazing man. I don't want to speak for anybody here, but we got the Dingo, Luke Chembath, a.k.a. the Dingo, in here. We have Natasha Gross, who is my new wife and founder, and Luca as well, a little 3-month puppy. So, thank you for everybody who is listening, and will hopefully continue to listen in the future.
I think for us, like the reason we want to do this is we always want to continue creating, and I think continuing the message of like what we're trying to deliver at Find Your Grind, I think is super important. And I think for us today to like talk about how we all got here and how we formed this team, and what we want to get out of this podcast, and why we think the first 10% of everything you do throughout life is the most important. And while this podcast is solely going to be focused on the first 10% of anything anyone's ever done to get to where they're going. And I think we all have such interesting stories to tell, the four of us. Like I was just thinking about that this morning in the car. Like we're so different. Like the four of us are such different people. Like you're from Nebraska, you're from New England, you're from Laguna, and I'm from Australia. And now we are co-founders in Find Your Grind, and we're basically a family. Right?
That's right.
And we like now speak basically every day, and our lives are so intertwined with our careers and everything else going on, and us forming this like company that is, I think, like definitely the most important thing and the biggest thing I've ever done in my life.
Yeah, I think this, as far as the ability to impact people, this might be the biggest thing any of us have created together. Like this is the reach that this can have, and the good that this can do, and the opportunity we have to level the playing field for people. I think this is the start of something incredible, and I'm stoked. I love it.
Very stoked. Very stoked.
It's going to be amazing.
Well, yeah, I mean, I know Mikey always says in all of his incredible speeches, never be the hero in your own story. And I've learned that, but I think it is important that we do share a little bit.
That is very true.
Yeah.
Don't make it about yourself.
Yeah. Before we tell you how great we all are, don't ever tell anybody how great you are.
Never.
Because nobody cares.
Nobody cares.
Honestly, you sound horrible when you do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
We've
So
learned that.
Who wants to go first?
I'll start. I think for me, it's this is Mike Smith. Some people call me Mike Smith Live because that was the only available Instagram handle at the time.
MSL.
MSL is what others say because Mike Smith Live is too many words.
Hashtag MSL.
Hashtag Mike Smith is alive, fully alive. And so for me, I get a chance to speak at schools. I get a chance to talk at colleges and to work with the education system, and I have in a lot of different ways. And to be able to create something like Find Your Grind for me has been a really cool opportunity to have impact that's going to grow and make a big difference. And I think the cool part about doing this with you guys is this podcast gives us a chance to bring people in, talk about their story, just continue to give great value to those of you out there that are trying to find your hustle and find your purpose. But I think the cool part about Find Your Grind is it's in a lot of ways we're in the first 10%. Like of it, and we're figuring it out together. I think that's the coolest part for me, or one of my favorite parts about it. I like that we've never done a podcast. We didn't even talk about the podcast. We just sat down today and we're like, let's do a podcast.
Yeah.
Because we're just gonna figure it out.
Yeah, I guess for me, like, I think it's so important with what we're doing because having a passion and having something and like truly digging deep to know what your gift is in order to allow that, in order to take that and make that a full-time career and make that a lifestyle is super important to me, you know. And like, I guess I think back to growing up and why I think this is important and why this means a lot to me. And growing up as a young kid in Laguna Beach, my family, I remember when my dad was making $60,000 a year, which to a lot of families can be a ton of money, but over the course of a couple of years, my dad started to become very, very successful. My family started to become very successful. And I would go to school in elementary school and in middle school, and my parents would they would get this thing where they'd pick me up in the front of the line during carpool when they'd pick the kids up after class or whatever, after school was over. And I always hated being the kid that like had that thing where I was like, okay, like why is Nick getting picked up in the front of, you know, or having like the priority of getting picked up after school, right? Because my parents were very concerned and protective over me and the whole thing, right? That's how the situation I grew up in. So I guess for me, I never wanted to be labeled as the kid that like came from resources and came from being able to have something that came easy to me, right? And like I never have to work for something. So for me, that just fueled my fire times like infinity. I wanted to prove, I was like, from that point on, I was like, I wanted to prove to everybody that like I can stand on my own 2 feet. Like I'm going to find something that I'm really good at and I'm going to be the best at it and I'm going to be different and I'm going to stand apart from other people. And that was truly what fueled not only like being able to watch the success of my family. I think was super inspiring for me and for my own personal growth of wanting to become a successful person as well, right? And being able to personally develop and become the best person that I can be. It was awesome to watch that through my father and through my family, but also too just wanting to be able to kind of be my own person, you know, because I feel like a lot of kids that come from you know, resources or wealth or from families that just kind of give their kids everything in a very unhealthy way, never have to work for anything, never have to think about what it is that they're good at, never have to create real connections and go out into the world in a real way. Like I remember my parents put me into I was washing cars when I was 15 years old. I was working in retail. I was painting houses. I was doing things that were healthy for me and doing these normal things that allowed me to kind of become a real person. And so I think my whole thing is just, and my parents bought me a drum kit when I was really young. And so I developed a passion for drumming and realized that I was really good at it, you know? And so that was just something where I was like, this is what I'm gifted at. And it became an identity for me in high school too, where kids knew me as the kid that was in a band, started something where all the kids would come to this event and come to our shows. And it was like, that was my identity and something that I was really, really great at and really passionate about. And I was lucky enough to have that as a foundation that led into other areas in my life today. With the studio that we run here, with the label that I now run, with Find Your Grind, with all these things that kind of came from music and came from identifying a passion really early on. So I think for me, I come from a different side of most of the world, right? Growing up in that situation is different, you know, and at the same time, I feel like I've been able to kind of identify how cool it is to have something that you're passionate about at a young age. And I want others to feel that too and be able to look into that and be able to like create a life around that, you know?
Well, it's so crazy because like the way that, you know, I look at you and perceive you is like you're one of the hardest working people I know and one of the most dedicated people I know. And that's that has always like blown my mind for you, because like you want to get up and you want to work and you do it every single day. Trips me out. Like you'll be on emails at 5:30 in the morning and still on emails at 1 o'clock the following night.
While he's on tour.
You know, and like that is something to me where I have strengths and weaknesses, and that's not a strength I have. You know, it's like, and I look at you and I am like, I have that guy on my side, that guy's on my team. That guy's one of the hardest workers I know. And one of the most dedicated people I know, and like that makes me sleep easy at night.
No, I appreciate that.
yeah.
That a lot. Yeah. Well, I don't know. I think that's just like when you think about, okay, well, why are we doing what we're doing? Why are we trying to help kids? Why is it so important that like kids identify with a lifestyle that pertains to a career so that they can, you know, it's like just learning and uncovering what you're good at and going down to the source of it. I feel like that's a big part of the source of why I feel like Find Your Grind is so important to me, because I was able to find something that has opened up so many opportunities in my life that I had no idea would be possible, you know, and it really comes from that situation.
Well, and I think today it's super relevant today, because more than ever, kids want to have an ability to leave an imprint, you know? They don't want to just make a living week-to-week paycheck. And if they are doing a week-to-week paycheck, they want to be doing something with their day, with their life, with their week that is reflective on who they are as a human being. You know, there's got to be more than paperwork. There's got to be more than this like 3-walled cube. And I think there's more opportunities today than there ever was to make that happen for yourself, with or without resources or education. And I think half of the battle is just being exposed to what those opportunities are. So, I mean, if we're just going to back up here, like why we wanted to start Find Your Grind, the simple core was we wanted to help people figure out who they are, where they're going, what they're going to do with that. And the most important piece, and like plugging back into this first 10% idea, is how they're going to get there. How are they going to do that? And I think even, you know, the lucky people that figure out what they are passionate about, what they do want to do, like the biggest battle is, how am I going to do it? Right? So I think that's where we're all coming from. That's our common ground on why we started.
Well, I think
this.
that speaks to your story too, right? Of like how to get there being such an important part, because for you, the how to get there part was confusing coming out of college with your story of having a degree and not knowing what to do with it, essentially. Maybe you want to talk about that and share your story a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, so everyone else, Mike, Dingo, and Nick, like they were all super gifted at something, like incredible voices, like creatives, entrepreneurs, and they, you know, that mixed with a little bit of timing equals like really cool, lucky opportunities for them that they totally capitalized on. I think for me, I grew up, I'm not going to blame it all on my family. It's also myself, just very conservative. I got to check all these boxes, right? I got to go to a great school. I got to get great grades, because then all these companies are going to come after me and I'm going to be financially independent and have a great life and a great career. And I think the storyline today is drifting away from that, because the majority of kids now versus past generations, the majority of kids do all have college degrees. So now you're battling not only that, right, but then there's like kind of an identity crisis with that. So I think for me, I learned this lesson that we try to teach with Find Your Grind all the time, that it's a lot more than education. It's soft skills, it's networking, it's experiences, it's maybe it's not even all the internships, you know? So I think for the kids that don't have the connectivity, the resources, the education, how can we step in and be that bridge from where kids currently are to where they're going in the most positive, constructive, concise way?
That's great.
Love that.
Creating the roadmap, and I think the roadmap we're creating, it all goes back to like who we are and why our stories come. And I think like, you know, as I like think about my first 10%. And I would say like my first 10% was like the sacrifices I made when I was a kid, and I was gifted at snowboarding, and snowboarding was an outlet for me that opened these opportunities. And my life at home had kind of gone south, and my father was gone, and it was my mom and my brother, and my brother was dealing with his own issues and that come with, you know, single parenting and the area we grew up in. but it was my father and my brother's passion for skiing that like got me into snowboarding. And then when it was me on my own, it was like snowboarding was that excel for me, and that was my like, I could be free and I could be whoever I wanted. And when I started competing and I started winning at a national level, it was like I'd never really been that good at everything. I was like okay at everything, but never the best at anything. And snowboarding was just like I was instantly better than everybody, and I didn't have to essentially work to get there. I was just put me on a snowboard and I was good. And it was like, I think about it, and it's like, it was kind of like my first love. And through like a dark time, it gave me hope. And then when I realized, I'd competed overseas a couple times and come to America and gone to Europe and realized there's a much bigger world out there. And from a small town in Australia, I was like, I don't want to stay here. This is the last place I want to be, because of the way that I was brought up and what I'd seen going on with my brother and those issues and issues that people go through in towns, whether it be drugs or violence or whatever it is. Like, and I didn't want to have anything to do with that ever. And snowboarding was my like, I'm going to get out of here through that. And it came to the point of like, okay, there's an opportunity for you to go to America, to leave everyone you've ever known, all the kids you've ever known, the family you've ever known, but this is going to give you an opportunity to create a new life.
What was that mindset for you then? I think it'd be important for a lot of people to understand that. Like, what was your mind space and your you know what I'm saying? Like, at that point, to make that decision to say, I'm going to come to a whole different country. I know this is the path that I want to go on. Like, was it just a no-brainer for you? Where you were just like, this is what I'm great at. Like, I don't care what happens. I'm just going for it. Because I feel like a lot of people...
It was a no-brainer.
People have a hard time, I feel like, making that decision.
No, I feel like when you... And listen, I think it happens at different phases in your life when you have to sacrifice and make that decision. And it was like, going back to it, that was the real decision. If I decided not to... Listen, it's the scariest thing I've ever done, but I wanted to do it because it was going to give me opportunity to keep snowboarding and figure out if there was a life there for me to be had. So going to the unknown was the only thing I wanted to do.
I remember you told me that your favorite class in school was geography because you wanted to know what else was out there. You were like obsessed with this idea of exploring and going and getting out. And
culturalizing. And like, I will never forget, like, so making that decision was easy but scary. The scariest thing I've ever done, because and when you have your foundation, nobody ever wants to leave their foundation. And that's why I always say, like, making yourself uncomfortable is going to create success for you. If you're comfortable, you're not going to succeed. Once you hit that comfort bubble, it doesn't matter what it is. And for me, it was at such a young age, I had that decision and decided to make that decision and leave, not knowing whether it was going to work out. And listen, like we all know in my story that it's changed 12 times and I've had to recreate myself every single time. But it was that original decision to get on that airplane, come to America, go to the unknown, walk into Steamboat Springs High School as a new person. Nobody knows me. Nobody knows me. I'm in a new country and I'm here to snowboard. I don't even know if I'm that good over here, but I'm really good over there.
Crazy.
But you tell them how you walked out. That's the best story you have. What was your last day like?
Of school?
Of high school.
Well, my last day of high school was me giving a GED book back to the teacher and never graduating and never doing my GED. But that that was because I was a professional athlete.
This is the story of Find Your Grind.
Yes.
Friction makes a fire.
So to keep it moving, because I want us all to talk about that first 10%. But when I was thinking about driving over here today, it was like that first 10% for me was making that, it's sacrificing, right? And it was sacrificing and going into the unknown and believing in yourself and going for it. And I believe I did that without knowing I was doing that, to create that first 10% of my entire life, or how we get to here. And it goes back to it, for me, having that life as a pro snowboarder and then being in the extreme sports world and being in a world that is kind of sheltered and being a part of a clothing company and being part of a TV show and being a part of all these different industries, I learned so much about workforce, but not workforce that you can go to college for, or not workforce they're teaching you about in a school. So I've learned all these skill sets
Through experiences.
And like when Find Your Grind, when we all came together as a team, it's the same way. Like when I met Mike, it was like I met Mike at Ryan Sheckler's golf tournament. He came up and took a picture with me and was weird. He was this weird guy, and I went up to Ryan's mom and I was like, who's this guy? He had these like super baggy like weird clothes on, and like
that was the costume of the day.
Okay, so you weren't a costume. Anyway, thank you. But anyway, so this guy makes a putt, wins $10,000. Ricky Fowler.
Not any putt. It was what, like a
65 feet. 65 foot
YouTube
putt.
it.
YouTube it. Mike Smith had a putt.
Ricky Fowler coached him into it. So anyway, like I was at a point where, again, I was looking for. I was still not 100% who I wanted to be. I still felt really empty. And that now we're going after 7 years on television, a clothing company, and a successful career as a snowboarder that parlayed into my announcing and working with all the companies I work for. But I still like felt a little bit empty, and like it was like more so like giving back. So I had met Mike, and Gretchen, Ryan's mom, had told me what he did, and she said he's a motivational speaker, and I was like super interesting. And at the time it was like more so to help out a friend of mine, Josh Wood, who I witnessed break his back as a kid. And that was one of the most awful traumatic things I watched, is literally building a snowboard jump, watching your friend break his neck and then be told he'd be a quadriplegic and never be able to walk again. And he was able to walk again but never lived a normal life. And it written a book, and I wanted to go and hear Mike speak. And after I'd done my research on him, and I went to a high school in Orange County, into the unknown, and Mike speaks in an auditorium, and high school students who are, we all know, like the hardest audience out of any audience. Like high school kids are scary and cool and like
Tough crowd.
Tough crowd.
He takes the tough crowd and makes the uncool kids cool and the cool kids uncool. And I'd never seen somebody transform a room like that. And that's why I got on an airplane and went to Nebraska and was like, dude, I'm in. Like, I don't know what you're doing here, but I have some connections and I know some people, and I'm here to help, and I want to grow this because your passion and what you're doing for this world needs a lot of it. And for me, coming out of a successful career and doing what I've done, I still felt really empty in myself, and there was a lot more to give. And that's, kind of how I met you, Mike. And
about a year later is when Natasha and I got to meet Mike down at our studio.
And I'd known you for 10 years.
That's right.
Mm-hmm. I'd known you for a long time, and when we met, we were both in different places.
Yeah.
And we had a lot of fun together. Not saying we did not have a lot of fun together, but we were young.
We weren't focused on what,
Absolutely
but
not.
But sometimes that's what it takes. It takes time to figure out what the relationship can bring,
And then a mutual friend brought us back together, and I got on a plane and went to Denver with you guys. And we just started chatting and kind of and it was
reconnecting.
I was so mind blown, because the Nick Gross that I knew was not the Nick Gross that I went to Denver, Colorado with. And the Nick Gross that I went to Denver, Colorado with was a guy that I saw dedication and passion, and he was going to succeed. It doesn't matter what he was going to do, he was going to get out there and succeed, just like you. And it was with what you and Natasha had done with the Find Your Ground Foundation that you guys had just launched,
mm-hmm.
and working out of your studio with the music side and the tech side and the connections and what you guys were doing here in the local area, and then what Mike was doing with the live talks and Justin's and where he was at and the foundation and the Bay. It just all made sense that everyone here needed to be together.
Yeah.
And it was bringing you guys together. Once it was you coming to LA and meeting Nick and Natasha and the group, it was to me, it was always going to work after that, and not really knowing again what we were going to do.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, we had started our foundation back in 2015, and we just started to bring kids into our recording studio from local areas around here. In Los Angeles and Orange County, and kids that were genuinely interested about getting into music or becoming artists or songwriters or music video directors, right? And we give them these tangible experiences at the studio, which were so cool to see. And a lot of these kids would then leave that day saying, hey, this is for me, or what a cool experience, or how can I do the next thing? And the next day I'll get hit up by maybe 3 or 4 of them saying, how can I really get into this? How can I, you know what I mean? How do I buy my first piece of equipment? And these are all just like real questions that kids have, like of how to genuinely get started with something. And that's when we met you, Mike, when you came in, and Natasha and I both felt it's like, man, how does this guy have thousands of kids like in high schools, like watching him speak, and when he speaks, these kids are, you know what I mean? Like
teachers run up to him wanting selfies like it's Bieber or something.
Yeah.
He's a superstar.
I was just like, dude, this is the coolest thing ever. Like, it'd be so cool to take what we've done, our small little thing here at the studio, and start to reach, a bigger audience of more kids. And so I believe that's when it all started. And I think Find Your Grind really resonated with you, Mike, because of what it was saying, about like, hey, I'm talking to kids about all the time about finding their grind and finding their purpose and tapping into what that is to create a better school environment or a climate in schools and stuff. And would you want to partner up on this together? And we were like, absolutely. And so I think the first thing we did was, okay, music is one career that we focus on, obviously down here at the studio, but how can we showcase hundreds of different careers to kids? And that's when we just started to film videos on extraordinary people doing kind of these 21st century jobs. I hate to say the word jobs, but 21st century careers, living lifestyles that they love and making money doing it. Because it's more than ever now where you can take something you're passionate about and genuinely make money doing something that you love, and that's due to technology. It's due to the barrier to entry now being so low to start something that you want to do. Mm-hmm. It's the rise in entrepreneurship being such a hot topic today. So I feel like for us, it was really that's kind of how this whole thing started. And now we have over 120 different career videos, I think, that live on Find Your Grind.
There's hundreds of career videos, and there's career videos that you can watch. The coolest part is kids want to live a life today. They don't want to work a job, and you'll talk to a college kid and they'll tell you all the right things because they're conditioned to, but they want a lifestyle. They want to experience things. You talk to kids, they want to travel and they want to help people, and that's about it. And they want to make money along the way, but it used to be impossible to do those things. It's not anymore. And we're just showing people that it's possible. We all started in like 4 very different places, but we all had to take our 1 or 2 things we were good at and make something of it. Well, and that's what we're showing people. It's like, it's the first 10% for me is not even like a stuff you do. It's a mentality you have to have.
Can you tell us though, like tell us about like where you grew up?
Yeah, for sure.
Like that's to me, like I love that. I love this whole part of it. Yeah, it's like we hit all 4 corners of the world or society in this room right here with the 4 of us. It's kind of
for sure. I think it's weird for me because I have to talk all the time, like about myself and about my story and about like I had an assembly today on Skype. So it's like I do this a lot. So it's like fun for me to sit back and listen to you guys and be like, damn, these guys. Like I love listening to you guys talk. You know what I mean? Like I kind of want to sit in the booth out there and be like, you guys go do it. You know what I mean? But I think I grew up just different. Like I grew up in the Midwest. I grew up in Rapid City, South Dakota. And then we moved to a small town in Nebraska where I just grew up in a town like most of America. It was a small community in the Midwest, and it was a town you'd never heard of and a place most people have never been to. And it wasn't a destination spot. And so, there's like more cows than humans where I'm from. And so I grew up having to try to figure out how to make something of myself in a place where there was no creativity. The coolest person in town was literally your art teacher. That was the most creative person in town. And it was like, that was it. And maybe an adult that played an instrument if you could meet them. And that was it. Like there was nothing else. And so we had to figure out how to be creative and figure out how to make fun and turn, you'd go to the dump and find a bathtub, and that became an adventure for a weekend of where can you pull this thing or how can you ramp this off of something. Like we didn't have mountains, so we had to build snowboard jumps that we could pull each other on 4-wheelers with. Like that's how we had to have fun. And so I think early on, if I learned anything early, I learned how to make something out of nothing. And that's like what my number one skill set is like, there's nothing here, but we're going to figure out how to patch it together and make something happen. And so growing up in a farm town, I think Dingo's
choking. Dingo's
coming.
He's back.
He's back now. Growing up in a farm town for me, it was like we had to make something out of nothing. And I got a chance to go, play basketball in college in Omaha. And once I got to a city, I was able to like take my skill set of like creating things when there wasn't things into the nonprofit world. And the part for me that's so interesting is my passion, my like favorite thing to do is to try to figure out ways to create stuff that helps people. Like that's it. Like I'm not good at the drums. I was never a pro athlete or an announcer. Like I'm a generally okay speaker. I don't even think I'm that good at speaking. Tosh, you're brilliant. Like you're book smart. You're all the things that smart people have. You've got all that stuff. Like I feel like I just kind of.
It's absolutely false. Mike Smith is the best speaker I've ever seen in my life.
I know, right?
But it's like
okay, so.
But you know what I mean? Like
no. All right. So you grew up. You grew up like that. How did you get into speaking at high schools? Like, where was that transition? Like, we all know. Well, we don't all know your story that you tell every day, but not everyone listening. But most people will be aware of it.
Right.
But like. You moved towns. You were like kind of a punk kid, skateboard kid.
Yeah.
Kind of like thought a lot about himself.
Yeah.
You moved to a really small town.
Yeah.
And then realized that life sucks.
Yeah, no, I realized that like life in a small town's hard, and the biggest transformating thing for me was.
But you were tall, and you were good at basketball.
I'm 5'11". I'm tall for you, but I was like, I'm serious. I'm like the most average human on the planet. Like I'm 5'11". I was good at basketball in a small town, which means you're just pretty good.
But you went to college and played basketball.
Yeah, at a small school.
And then what?
But yeah, so for me it was college, and then I've never not had a job. When I got to college, from the day that I literally got there, I've never not had a job where I was working with teenagers. Never once. There's never been a moment in my life where that wasn't the focus. And so that is literally all I know.
I didn't know that.
That's it. That's all crazy. I got. Even if I was painting as a side hustle or starting or working for things, my main source of like life and income has been trying to help teenagers navigate life. That is what I have done, and that's all I know.
So the most average man in America becomes America's biggest youth speaker of all time.
And what was the thing? What was the first thing that you did that was in that world?
It was like local speeches at local schools. Sure. I think the first speech I ever gave at a high school that we recorded was at the alternative high school. The gymnasium wasn't even a full gym. It was a half-court gym because that was the size of the building they had, with like 100 chairs set out for the kids who were like teen moms or dropouts or fifth-year seniors. It was the first speech I ever gave, and I filmed it rocking the DGK shirt and an I Heart Haters hat.
Wow. And you still got that I Heart Haters hat.
I've got it on right now.
I tattooed that thing. But like I just did it. I just gave a speech. And it was like, and I just think it was, I've never looked at talking to people. I don't talk any different on stage than I talk right now. Like it's the same cadence, same conversation. The only difference is there's a microphone in front of my face. I just talk to people the way that I want to be talked to, which is like direct and honest and to the point, and not fluffy. And I'm not interested in like fake helpful things. Like what's really helpful. Like that's the stuff I care about. And so I talk about that. I talk in that way. But yeah, I think for me it was even my get to becoming a speaker. Like it took a year for me to get booked anywhere.
But how did you? Where was the transition of like, okay, you were speaking in local schools or whatnot, but when was the transition of like Mike Smith Live or Mike Smith the speaker like was born?
So there were 3 huge events that if you speak at these events in the youth speaking world, like if you can speak at those, it kind of helps set your career up. I did 2 out of the 3 for free, and one of them I took like a half a fee and got paid to go speak. And I did all 3 of those things in the same like 2-week span, and it just went from like no one had heard of who I was to there was seriously a school year, like in maybe 2014 or 2015, I spoke at 187 high schools in 181 school days. Wow. So I was literally doing 2 schools a day in Washington for like 2 months straight. I didn't go home for.
You got your 10,000 hours.
Oh, in a year. I mean, and then it was like.
And to back it up real quick, and I think everyone in this room will vouch on that. You said it. You worked for free in the beginning, and like doing stuff for free you're not doing stuff for free. If you're doing stuff and it's work, just because you're not getting paid doesn't mean that it's not work and it's not going to land you to where you want to go. So it's like doing that work first and not getting paid for it, again, is another huge thing in the workforce that if you're not getting paid, it doesn't mean you're not working. You got to go do the work.
Mike says too, like, even if you can't get an unpaid internship, like, what do I do? How do I build my resume? How do I build my experience list? And Mike always says, service.
Yep.
That's it.
There's no nonprofit that will not take your time and genuine energy. And that's how you can build yourself up.
And it's the thing that people have to understand is I still speak for free every month. Like every month there is something, somewhere, some stage I am on where I traded my time for something other than money that day. That's all it is like sometimes you're just trading your time for exposure. That's not working for free. People don't get, how much does exposure cost? You were in marketing. How much does it cost just to be exposed to the world, right?
Sometimes it's priceless.
You can't, exactly. And so I just don't think money's not always, if you're trying to just do something to get money, once you get it, like you're not going to understand there's a lot more things it takes to be successful in business than just making money. Exposure is huge. If you have a ton of exposure, I didn't try to sell it. People don't understand, I didn't sell anything like as a speaker for 6 years. Like 6 years until there was like a thing you could buy, which was a book that I wrote. So like I didn't like start speaking and then I was like, oh, by the way, I got Mike Smith branded t-shirt. Like we would do like a little drop here or there, but it was you have to build. The first 10% for me in getting to where we got today was literally like I became an expert at not millennials and Gen Z. I became an expert at where millennials and Gen Z want to go. That's what I learned the most. It wasn't like who they are as people. They change and they're so different. They're way different than we ever were. There's so many ways to be a kid today. Like you walk into a high school and you're like, oh, it's not just like the athlete and then the this and the that and the that like we kind of have. It's the most diverse place in America. I mean, it's crazy. High schools in America are crazy. You'll have kids who are 7 different things where we used to just be like 1 or 2 things. You said you defined yourself as a drummer. Now it's like you can be 1,000. You can be a drummer and a filmer and a this. And there's so many things you can be at one time today where we didn't feel like that was possible. And I see that every day. But I think I became an expert at where kids want to go. And where they want to go is they want to do it themselves. They want to call their own shots, play by their own rules, write the playbook. They want to determine time, money, energy. They want to be in charge.
Yeah.
Because they've been in charge of their brand and their life and their world and their thing way before we were. And so that's what Find Your Grind is showing them. We're going to show you how to get there.
And I think a lot of kids probably too now deal with how do I even know where to begin or like where to start with something, you know? And I mean, I guess for you, what was it that was like, I'm going to start speaking. Like I want to hang out I want to hang out with I want to, figure out what's inside a teenager's brains. And I know how I can speak to that. Like, what was it to you? You know, I know for me, it was like getting inspired on YouTube, like to be totally simple about it. You know, when I was a young kid, I would go online, I would watch drummers that I really aspired to be. I would play to those albums, and in a weird way, like I feel like I almost obsessed myself so much with taking control of like wanting to become the best drummer, or wanting to become like the most successful band, or wanting to get on the road and do all these things that you dream of as like a young teenager, right? Of like the coolest things that you can do about being in a band. But truly like obsessing myself and almost becoming like our own manager, writing everything down. I used to write so much stuff down, like in a notebook of like, these are my goals and these are the things that I want to hit every week, and almost like created my own reality in my own head to make sure that I manifested those things to become true. And I believe there is like a huge power in doing stuff like that, because I remember watching videos of like Travis Barker playing in the TRL window with Blink-182, like some of the coolest old videos ever, and getting so inspired by that and being like, I want to play in that damn window. Like I need to play on top of that window. Yeah. And a couple of years later, we had a series of events happen where an MTV show came into our town and started filming a show called Laguna Beach, which then featured our band in the 3rd season, which was awesome. And then that led us to being able to actually play TRL and close out that show in that window. So here I am as a 17, 18-year-old kid, like playing in these certain places that I like have manifested in my head. And I think for everyone listening, like there is a power in that, of just being like knowing what your goals are, like what your focus is on like figuring out what that gift is, setting expectations, managing your expectations of how fast you're going to get there. Because back then I was like, I want this to happen now, but it takes time. But these things started to happen in a crazy way. And just from knowing what I was really good at and kind of tapping into that and obsessing myself with it to try and really get to the best next step. And these things started to happen. So I guess like that's a long tangent. And I guess asking you, like, I guess, do you just know what I want to speak to teenage kids and I'm good at it?
No. And it's like, I think it for, hold on, I want to address one thing. If anybody listening to what you just said, like it was, you manifested it because there was nothing else. Like that was it. There wasn't an other thing, and most people have this, like, I want to do this, and you go, okay, great. And you're doing what about it currently? And it's almost always, well, nothing. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yours was like, I want to do this. And it's like, and what are you doing? And you're like, everything else was a distraction from the thing that you thought which was drumming, which was most important. Like your tests that day all you were thinking about was like, I'm going to drum, I'm going to drum.
School never mattered to me, dude. I cut a mohawk so quickly, bro. After I watched the Travis videos, I was a 13-year-old kid with a red mohawk in a private school in high school with long Dickies pants beneath my knees.
Yeah.
Like, and people were like, "Who is this kid?" But I didn't care because I was like, I know what the hell I'm doing, and I don't care what anyone says.
But now you drum with Travis Barker, so it's like
Yeah.
a complete manifestation. A manifestation is like a key word of the first 10%. Sacrifice is a manifestation. Manifestation for me was the same way. It's like I dreamed about these people. I watched these people in snowboard videos. The next thing, I'm like traveling the world with these people.
Right.
You dream about it, you think about it, you sacrifice, and you will get there.
Yeah.
And another thing you said too is like, yes, like everybody wants that instant success. Social media and the way the world works today, like everybody wants it right now. And to tell you the truth, like, you don't want it right now. You want to work for it, and you want to fail, and you want to get back up, and you want to get to your goal point, but you want to have the hurdles along the way. So when you get there, you feel like you deserve it, and you hold on to it,
and you're ready for it. Like it's like manifesting something's great, but then how do you act on that is everything. And you guys just acted. You rode your snowboard, you played the drums, you did the thing you have to do to get there. And I always tell everyone, the reason I call it growing into your greatness, the reason you have to grow into it is when I started the Bay, the nonprofit whole thing that I've got, it was like, if I had to deal with the issues that I have at the Bay currently, when I first started, there's no way it would have worked. Like, I wasn't ready. There's no way I would have been ready to deal with the families and the people and the issues that we have now in 2010. No way. And you have to give yourself time to learn what you're doing and figure it out. Imagine if 17-year-old you at that capabilities would have had a chance to be like, hey, you're going to go play with Goldfinger tomorrow. There's no way you would have killed it. You would have done as good as you could have, but it wouldn't have been to the level that you gave when you were just there. Yeah. Totally different. You've got to grow into that greatness. But what people are following today is people who are in the process of, like, they're almost at complete and total greatness. That's who gets famous online. That's who kids get to see, are these people that are blowing it up. What we're talking about is, well, how did you even start, right? Like, how did you even get there? And that was a question you asked, was like, why at 18 is helping people the start? And for me, it was the most impactful people on the planet are the ones who are willing to help you when you need it the most. That's what you know, right?
Yeah.
Think about that. Like,
it's
just
true.
To you, it's who is that person that in your mind you're like, who is the most impactful human in my life? And it wasn't the most famous person you knew. It wasn't the coolest person you knew. It was the one who was like, I'm just going to figure out a way to help you right now. Whatever that looks like, I'm going to figure out a way to help you.
That's Mike Smith. Yeah.
And that is literally all I am. And
No.
That's it.
Like, you changed my life, and I'll never forget when when you met Rob Dyrdek for the first time, and you were sitting there talking, and we're in this meeting, and Dyrdek looks over at me, and like Dyrdek's like, I feel like I'm a bad person. Right? Because like Mike's sitting there telling the story about Kelvin and how he adopted, like, Kelvin. Explain Kelvin's story a little bit before.
Yeah, I have a friend from high school who was just grew up different and hard, and his life was, he just didn't have, he started off on a tough spot, and he grew up different and slow, and my wife and I were able to take him into our home, and he lives with us, and he's a part of our family. But he is like my best friend who helped me kind of figure out who I am and where I want to be. And yeah, he just taught me a lot about life. But Calvin is just, he became kind of my best friend from high school, and now he's a part of my family.
But like, the crazy thing to me is when that story's told, like, you spent your entire senior year to give back to this kid, and the football team that you played on, the kids, the cool kids, or the kids that, have parties on the weekends or hang out with cheerleaders and whatnot, and you spent your entire senior year with this kid. You ended up getting him to run. He got a touchdown, right? Or he ran the ball across?
No. He went out for basketball. He played basketball and got to shoot free throws.
Anyway, so you inducted him into your group.
Yeah.
But like, without that never would have happened. So you put you put him first your entire senior year. I feel like most people in their senior year only care about themselves and where they're going to school that next year, or what their next step is, or right. That's that. But that is you to a nutshell, to where you are always going to put other people first. And when I met you, I was so attracted to that, because I was the complete opposite. I only cared about myself until I think I met you. Yeah, and then I decided to change my life.
I think like a really cool like lesson as I'm listening. I mean, I've known all of you guys for almost 10 years, but listening to all your stories is you guys have always been able to assess whatever you have, whether it's socks from your sports team, whether it's your knowledge of action sports from your former professional career, whether that's your recording studio that you own. Like, there's no one on this planet that can't critically think about what they have to offer and be able to give that, no matter what that is. Take what you have. It's not like, oh, I can't get there, I can't give this, I can't do that because I don't have X. You have something. You definitely do, even if all that is your time.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a really cool lesson. I don't know how much more time we have, but I think a cool exercise, like pulling it back into Find Your Grind. Do you guys have, like, all the time I get asked, like, what's your advice? What's your one thing you would tell, like, a young kid trying to find their grind? Like, what's the one thing, like, I can go first. I don't know if you guys want to, like.
Rip it.
Hit it, Tosh.
For me, like, the thing that trumps everything else getting you from where you're going to where you are to where you're going, my one sentence advice would be find mentors early and often. That's like the most critical piece. I never wanted to ask for help. I always wanted to do it myself. I thought like cookie cutter was going to get me there. And if I just would have spoken up and found mentors earlier and asked them questions, asked for help, asked to just shadow them, that would have changed my life way earlier.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say for me, that's definitely a big one, of course, and we talk about that a lot with Find Your Grind, or the importance of soft skills and knowing how to reach out to people or having conversations, because kids are so stuck in their phones. I mean, I think we all are very much so stuck on our phones, but I can only imagine what, you know, the upcoming generation are doing now and how much time they're spending on their phones. But being able to connect with people in a real way, having real experiences, I think, are super important. Like we talk about the 10,000 hours, but actually, like, writing things down, I'll go back to it, was super important for me, of just being like simply talking about, hey, these are 10 things that I want to accomplish, and this is the person I want to call, this is the person I want to watch a video on, like, just, and writing it down and checking things off. And I think having that kind of positive, affirmative type of energy that goes into that is just creating a positive environment too for you to manifest things that you want in your life. So I think focusing on the positive, there's so many things that are out there now that are so negative, and the only things you see now from people, and celebrities are things that are the best versions of themselves, right? Which can be super deflating for young people to see. Hey, like the only thing you're seeing on Instagram is like the best shit that people are talking about or posting. You don't see the negative sides of what most people have to go through, and from that it creates a false sense of reality in a big way, and so I would say just simply just writing things down, knowing what your goals are, that immediately creates a positive environment and positive energy, and a focus, and that created a lot of help and success for me early on as a kid.
I'd say on that front, it's, if you want something, you're gonna have to give something up, and sacrificing is like a huge part of success. I think early on too, So I would say it's sacrificing and putting yourself out there, and I think being uncomfortable is a good thing. If you're comfortable, make yourself uncomfortable real quick, because it's not going to be comfy for that long.
Mm-hmm. I love that.
And I think I think through this process we're gonna get to know each other. We all know each other really well, but everyone's gonna get to know us, and we're gonna be able to tell all of our stories. And I'm really excited. The people that we're gonna bring in here, and the people that we're gonna talk about their first 10%, and it's gonna be in a range of like our group of friends and the people we know in the workforce, and what Find Your Grind is, and the products that we're launching. It's kind of endless, and it's never gonna end, and it's going to be, always the first 10% of how these people got to where they are, and like digging into that dirt and knowing that first 10% is probably, the key element to success, and the story that people don't show today. It's social media and the way the world works. Everybody shows the glory story.
Totally.
It's like everybody knows where like Walt Disney ended up, but like nobody knows that Walt Disney struggled to get to where he got to.
Sure. Absolutely.
I spoke at his high school.
Did you?
Mm-hmm. The town. It
Did
looks
you?
like Disney.
Did they give you a Mickey
Oh my
pin?
God.
It's incredible.
Did they give
oh
you-
yeah, you get
For
the
the
best
hat,
gift
yeah.
bag ever.
Yeah.
The best school gift bag I've ever gotten was Walt Disney's high school
Epic.
gift bag.
Epic.
It was sick. For me, it is whatever the checklists are, whoever your mentors are, however uncomfortable you make yourself along the journey, you got to help as many people as you can along the way. And that's what mine is. It's like, I don't care where, if you're in high school today, if you're working 3 jobs trying to figure out what your grind is, or if you're making it and you're on your way, whatever you're doing, there is always time to take a second to help somebody else up along the way. And I think that's my thing. It's like someone can benefit from where you are, so take someone with you. And I think it's in those moments you really become self-aware of who you are and what you care about and what matters to you. And I think that there's a really special thing that service has along the journey that I think if we all loved on each other a little bit more and were better to each other, I think the process would maybe not be as hard for the world. And so
I love that.
that's mine.
Yeah. Well, I think also too we've talked about a lot, but as a company of what we're just generally doing with Find Your Grind is a lifestyle brand. You know, rooted in self-discovery through education, through content, through products and curriculum that we have in schools now, which I can't believe. And you know, through live events, we have events now that are happening in high schools and colleges all around the country, speaking to kids about what it means to find your grind and this general conversation we're having today. And it's really developed out of those, you know, videos that I was talking about earlier, these career and content pieces we have up on findyourgrind.com that you can check out. But really there's a lot of facets to what we're doing, I believe, as a company. And that's why I call it a lifestyle brand, right? Because it can be so much more than just, you know, career videos and stuff like that, which I'm so happy this is developing in that way. And I'm so excited for what we're building. I think it's really, really cool.
Yeah,
I agree.
I have no idea where it's going. Left foot, right foot. And that's the exciting part. That's the exciting part about it. You know, it's going into the unknown. But like, you know, the belief I have in the three of you is I believe in the three of you more than mostly everything I've ever done in my life. And I am like honored to like sit here with you guys and like go into the unknown, because we all believe, and passion's going to take you a long way, and we're passionate about what we're doing, so we're always going to give our best. So that means the Find Your Grind products, that means the live events, the trade shows we do, the gaming, like we're always going to give it 110%. And that, you know, and the fact that like we were talking about this last night, it's like, is it ever going to be over? It's
Never.
like we're never going to finish. There's no finish line to what we're doing.
No, we use the word evergreen a lot, which we like, and I think it's a continual thing. Find Your Grind is a continual process, right? Whether you're a high school kid, whether you're a 40-year-old mom that's looking for the next thing that we talk about of like, your kids just went off to college, what do I do next? Like, ultimately this thing hopefully helps, you know, the world figure out what that is, that, you know, how to take that next step in the right way and figure out a little bit more about themselves through the processes that we're creating internally.
Right. And the people we're able to bring on, it's like we're putting on really intelligent people that are way smarter than I am.
Oh.
You know, and that I love that. I love being able to go into a room and be like, you know what? I am definitely not the smartest person in this room.
No.
I always feel
Not even
I always
close.
feel good when Toshs is with us, because I'm like, I don't really got to talk.
Yeah.
I'm just kind of like, I'm gonna just sit here and be smiley.
I agree.
And we were listening to Kevion and Drama on the podcast in the car last night, and it's you know, Kevion saying, and I think that's how you ended up on Drama's podcast.
Yeah. Yep.
You know, and that's how which you know I learned. I'd known you for 5 years, and I listened to that and didn't know anything that Drama ripped out of that conversation with you, which was your life story. So I learned a lot through you, through podcasts and people that we've now kind of been connected with, or people we've known for a long time. And like Kevion saying last night, like how he was standing there and all of a sudden he realized it was him, and then there was a team around him. And like yesterday, it's like we go through meetings, or we dive into different parts of what we're doing, and we're building like an amazing team, and some of the people around us, like we've got people wearing suits around us, which is hilarious.
Yeah, it is the best feeling to go to a conference or to a high school and see a teacher take off their polo shirt and put on a shirt that says the future belongs to the Misfits and wear it proudly.
Yep.
That is one of the coolest things I think that, you know, we've done.
Yeah.
You know?
Easy on the suits, guys. I used to wear those things.
But all All right, guys, is that it?
Episode
Is that
1.
I guess.
Episode one.
I guess. I don't even know how these things work. For a guy who's been on radio for a long time, I feel awkward.
Listen,
No,
And I think we
no.
did all right.
No, you're like a good host over there, man. You look professional. You look hosty.
You wear your pink socks. You guys pink socks on.
This is fun.
Yeah, it was a lot of
You know
fun.
what it kind of might be for us? I was thinking when I was
Therapy?
listening. Yeah, it's a little bit of
Yeah.
therapy. I was
We
like,
do.
Nice.
Yeah.
I just
Therapy
like you
for us is
guys.
good.
Yeah, we're just recording therapy.
Yeah.
Well, we're excited. I mean, I would love to have eventually, some of the best people that we can find to have be a part of this, and I'm excited to keep filming episodes or shooting podcasts or recording podcasts, I should say, and hopefully we get a good group of people in here. So,
Cheers.
To the first 10%.
to the first
10%.
Thanks,
Hear, hear.
guys.
Here.
Bye bye.